Sivaye Nama Tiruchitrambalam. Welcome back. We are continuing our discussion on Thiruppaatu, 7th Tirumurai, 1st Thiruppadigam, which is for the place called as Thiruvennainalloor, and we are going to talk about the 4th verse today. Mudiyaen, inipiravaen, perin moovaen, petram oorthee, kodiyaen, poyyae, uraippaenai, kuri sediyaar, pennai, thenpaal, venney, nalloor, Arul, thuraiyul, adikael, unakku, aalaay, allaen, enalaamae. This is the verse. If you look at it, Nambi Aroorar is asking Lord Shiva, how can I say I'm not your slave after you have done so many things for me? Is there a possibility that I can even say that I'm not your slave? So that is how he ends this verse. Now let's see why he says such words. Yeah. So if you look at the first statement, he says, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to be reborn again. Even if I'm going to be born, touch wood, even if I'm going to be born, I'm sure I'm not going to go through this hassle of getting old. So we call it, we talk about, as of today's age, we are talking about getting old with grays and whatever it is. That is not going to be our concern. Nambi Aroorar is so determined to say that. Why? Because Lord Shiva has given him the boon of never to be born again. Is it possible for a human being? Yes, it is possible. Once we achieve this concept of self-realization, human lives will also transform. We will get into Lord Shiva's feet, lotus feet, and after that there is no way we are going to be born again. That is what the first half of the verse talks about. First, the statement talks about. He says, Mudiyaen, inipiravaen, perin moovaen. I'm not going to be born, I'm not going to be dead. One thing we need to understand is in Saivam, we are not scared of death. None of the Saivites will be scared of death, because as I was mentioning earlier itself, it is something like reunion with our dad. We are going back to our birthplace. We are supposed to be with Lord Shiva, but due to some of our karma, we have been split from him. So death is a reunion. So no one will be crying for a death. We shouldn't be crying for a death, obviously. That number one. Second is, when you talk about Saivites, we are scared of being born again. We are not scared of dying. We are okay to die, but we don't want to be reborn again in this world, because we know it's full of misery and we don't want to go through this misery once again. That is as simple as that. So that is the reason most of the Saivite songs you will see, we are so proud to say we are okay to die, and that's why we depict Lord Shiva to be in the graveyard. But whatever it is, we don't want to be born again. That is very clear. Now, you look at the next statement. He says, petram oorthee, which is, oh God, you are always having your beautiful vehicle, which is a bull. Imagine, is there a possibility someone can travel with a bull? Lord Shiva can. Why? Because bull is supposed to be sattvic in nature. And anything you talk about Lord Shiva, it will always be associated with Tamilian culture. 100% Tamilian culture. Vegetation, cultivation and farming is our main identity. That is what people are trying to totally wash away as of today. But our main identity is farming. And what is so helpful in farming? Obviously a bull. That is why Lord Shiva's vehicle is taken as, when I say vehicle, you can imagine, right? So we are taking the bull as Lord Shiva's most important, someone which is very close to Lord Shiva. Now, not only that, if you look at the bull, it helps in farming, but it doesn't eat rice. It doesn't eat the produce of the farming. It eats only the waste from the farming. That is how gracious a cow can be, a bull can be. That is the reason we, and somehow it's a sattvic in nature, right? And that's the reason we always worship bull and cow as part of, and in Tamil, literal meaning of cow, which is madu, the literal meaning of that is wealth. So that's how we have seen cow is wealth, is equal to wealth. That's how we have always been lived. Now you look at the second statement. Kodiyaen pala poyyae uraippaenai kuri sediyaar pennai. Then the next line comes in. In this he says, I have been like we talk about a plant without any spines, which is basically the creepers. If you look at a creeper, it doesn't stand straight because it doesn't have a spine, right? It cannot stand straight. It always leans on something. And when you talk about human beings, we are also similar to a creeper because we always lean on something we shouldn't be leaning, which is nothing but this maya, this pasam. We are always leaning towards something that is going to give us trouble, that is always going to sabo us, together being with us. It's like a parasite, and we are aware of it as a parasite, yet we are leaning towards that. So Nambi Aroorar says, all along I have been like a creeper, but what you did was you came in, you cut through all the unwanted stuffs around me, and you gave me a stand so that I can grow on you. Creeper needs something to rely on. Instead of pasam, now we have Lord Shiva. That's it. So we need to go on with something or someone. When we have to be leaning towards someone, why shouldn't it be Lord Shiva? Instead of talking about all the unwanted things around us, let's lean towards Lord Shiva. He will give us the guidance. That is what the second statement says. And then he says, sediyaar pennai thenpaal venney nalloor Arul thuraiyul, which is talking about the beauty of that place, full of gardens. The place called Thiruvennainalloor has a beautiful river called as Pennai, and around the shores of that particular river, there's a lot of gardens. Now, when you talk about the gardens, the characteristic of a garden is from one plant, another plant and another plant and another plant will just keep on growing. Similar to us, we are being born again and again and again. So that is why we call it as sediyaar. We want to get rid of this birth and death cycle, the vicious cycle of birth and death. So Lord Shiva is the only one who can cut those roots and make sure that we are not going to be born again in this painful world. We are going to be happily seated in our Father's lap. When can that happen? Only when we surrender ourselves completely, Lord Shiva. That is what today's verse talks about. I'll come back again with the next verse very soon. Until then, Sivaye Nama, Thiruchitrambalam.